Chael, I love you. I've never loved you more than this moment right now. I mean, just seeing you with the flannel, wearing the Expos hat, I mean, this warms my heart unlike anything. So I just want to thank you for going the extra mile with this. Now, let's get to the business at hand. Nathan Diaz, what he did last week, in my opinion, was quite possibly the greatest power play in the history of mixed martial arts. Here is a guy who finds out from USADA that there's a banned substance in his system, and they tell him, be quiet, we're going to figure this out. He says, oh no, I'm not keeping any skeletons in my closet. I'm not going to allow you to have any ammunition on me now or down the line when we have, some tough times, some tough negotiations. So what am I going to do? I'm going to break my own news. I'm going to out myself. I'm going to let the world know that I am not a cheater. And not only am I going to do that, I want you all to tell the world that I am unequivocally not a cheater. And unless you do that, unless you completely exonerate me, I am not getting on that plane to New York City. No one has ever done this. And people, after the fact, have been saying, oh, they played favorites. They wouldn't have done this for a prelim fighter. Guess what? You're right. But Nate Diaz has spent 15 years to get to that moment where he was able to flex on them, where he was able to exert his power and let the powers that be know that you are not going to do this to me. It was an amazing thing to watch, those 24 hours. And quite frankly, in my opinion, like I said, one of the great power plays, one of the great flexes, if you will, in mixed martial arts history.
And Ariel, there was a great part, but save it for just a moment. My favorite part of this whole conclusion. Don't forget, when this came out, USADA's not the one that outed him. The UFC didn't out him. He outed himself. And by the way, when he outed himself in that statement we just had up there, he took away 2 possible defenses. He said, hey, don't think we're going to do this contaminated substance garbage story. I get that from Whole Foods. It's the highest grade quality. Oh, by the way, don't think that I'm going to come in with the tainted meat that has been going around. I'm a vegan. I don't even eat meat. I mean, these were the words of an innocent man. And you're getting this from a guy that lived on the other side of the tracks. I used to be guilty of this and wanted to look innocent. I know BS in this field when I see it. Ariel, I've never seen anybody more unguilty of this assertion than Nate Diaz, particularly in the way that he handled it. And while you may say that's circumstantial, well, now we have the science behind it, and my assertion turned out to be correct. But Helwani, I got to tell you my favorite part. One of Nate Diaz's demands, not only that they keep the lab open, that they bring in better experts, that they work overtime, and they get that resolved right now. He wanted not an apology, Ariel. He demanded 2 apologies. I have no idea why. He told the UFC and USADA, you don't just apologize to me, you give me 2 apologies. And for some reason, that's funny.
Yeah, it's amazing. He turned the tables on them. Look, if this was 5 months from now and he didn't have a fight booked in 8 days, I'm not sure they're working this quickly to exonerate him. But because there was a lot at stake, he pretty much had them up against the ropes, and he was able to demand all of this stuff. And again, look, if you're on a movie set, Chael, and an extra breaks his legs, the show goes on. But if Al Pacino breaks his leg, the show stops. And Nate Diaz is Al Pacino. The show had to stop for a moment, and he was not going to budge unless they cleared him. And I love the fact that he did not want to live with this. He did not want to have this cloud hanging over his head. There's a very good chance, Chael, that we would never find out about any of this, that they would have cleaned it up, and this would have been one of those things that 5 people, would know, and no one else. The media, the fellow fighters, no one. But he wanted the world to know that he was not going to play that game, that he was not going to sweep anything under the rug, that he had built his entire legacy and career on being a clean fighter, and he didn't trust these guys. And he's been telling us for years, I don't trust these guys. And now he feels like, oh, now they got one on me. I'm not allowing this to happen, so I'm going to out myself. It's tremendously endearing. It's unbelievable. And quite frankly, Chael, this Saturday, we're all sort of pretending like he's defending the BMF title. I'd say he defended that BMF title last Thursday and Friday. That was one of the coolest things that I've ever seen anyone do. And especially for a guy who came into the sport as the awkward, shy brother of Nick Diaz, to see him grow up with this confidence in front of our eyes, to demand these sorts of things, incredible.
And Ariel, don't forget about the other side of the coin, which is the brilliance in the marketing that he did. Now, this was unintentional. He doesn't get to go before a college and fill in for a professor someday because he's so brilliant. You can't write a chapter on this, but rewind. You were speaking of his brother, Nick. How about the day that Nick no-showed a press conference against his fight with George St. Pierre? That ends up on Sports Center. The empty seat of Nick Diaz made for such great theater that Sports Center put it on. At that time, 2 people in fighting could get on Sports Center, Dana White and Brock Lesnar. They put an empty chair where Nate Diaz was supposed to be sitting. I'm just saying, you can't buy this kind of advertising, and I realize that Nate did not do it to advertise. but it is a consequence, and it's brilliant.
And speaking of the empty chair, Chael, here's another thing that people aren't talking about. Nate Diaz may have done more for fighters' rights than anyone in the history of this sport quietly. Remember the empty chair with Conor McGregor at that press conference when they wanted him to side with the promotion, but he sided with Conor? Remember vaping after UFC 202? Remember this situation, which now sets a precedent? This guy, some of those times, yes, they have been sort of self-serving, but let's be honest, he's done a lot to empower the fighters, and he doesn't get enough credit for that.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports and analysis, download the ESPN app. And for live streaming and special content, subscribe to ESPN+.